Rio de Janeiro is at the very center of Brazil's history and the very center of the relationship between Brazil and the imperial power, Portugal, for centuries. And we're standing in a place that is absolutely at the essence of that history. This is the Imperial Palace, and it's called the Imperial Palace for reasons that are utterly fascinating. Of course, when the Portuguese first arrived in Brazil, we know, they first made their capital and the center of the new settlement in the north of here, in Salvador. But over time, the economic center of gravity moved in the southwest direction, moving towards Rio de Janeiro. And it was especially at the end of the 17th century when one of the most dramatic shifts occurred, and that was the discovery of gold in the mountains in what is now the state of Minas Gerais, of the general mines state. This unleashed a gold rush, as happens in so many parts of the world, a tremendous influx of people seeking wealth in the mines. And the natural port for that gold rush, the natural port for the gold mines and then the diamond mines in Brazil, was the port that was established in Rio de Janeiro. And that meant that already by the middle of the 18th century, now remember that the first arrivals of the Portuguese are in 1500, and the gold rush begins around the 1690s. By the 1760s, Rio already was the port of the booming empire, especially around the mines, but also around the agricultural production. Still the great sugar mills and sugar plantations, both of the Northeast, but also now in this area as well. So in 1763, Rio became the seat of the viceroy. In other words, it became the new capital for the Portuguese Empire of the Americas, moving from Salvador to Rio. And that already showed the importance of this region and its centrality. But the events that were to come are absolutely amazing and make this building, which started out as first the center of the local district of the Portuguese, then became the home of the viceroy when the capital was moved to 1763, became the center of the Portuguese Empire itself in 1808, in an absolutely remarkable and fascinating sequence of events. Of course, the early 1800s, the first years of the 19th century, were the years of the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. And in 1807, Napoleon aimed to invade Portugal, and indeed he did so. And by the end of 1807, the royal court in Lisbon knew that their days were numbered if they stood and remained in Lisbon. They would be deposed by Napoleon and his armies. And so with the help of the British, who were already the dominant naval power of the world, a British squadron escorted the royal court of Portugal, of the Portuguese Empire, out of Lisbon, across the Atlantic Ocean, landing in Salvador, but then quickly coming to make Rio the new imperial capital, not only the capital of Portugal in Brazil, but the capital of the Kingdom of Portugal itself. The leader of Portugal at the time was the Prince Regent, John VI, who was ruling in stead of his mother, Queen Maria I. When she died, he became King of Portugal, and he was here as the King of Portugal, ruling his empire and ruling Portugal in absentia because of Napoleon's presence. Of course, Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, and with the opening of the Congress of Vienna, King John VI thought that to boost the negotiating power of Portugal in this general political settlement of post-Napoleonic War Europe, instead of having one kingdom, there would be three empires. The Empire of Portugal, and co-equal empires of Brazil and of the Algarve. Three co-equal empires, all under Pope John VI. And this was the state of affairs until 1821. At that point, King John VI, after the end of the wars and in need of securing his throne back in Europe, in Lisbon, returned to Europe and left his son, Pedro, to become the essentially the regent ruling in Brazil. And that idea of three equal empires, King John VI rethought, of course, in the new context after the Congress of Vienna, will make one empire once again. And the court in Lisbon demanded that Brazil become once again subservient to the single kingdom of Portugal. But at that point, the leaders in Brazil were having none of that. And they pushed Pedro, the son of King John VI, to declare the independence of Brazil. In 1822, Brazil declared its full independence from Portugal as the Kingdom of Brazil, with the new emperor, Emperor Pedro I. Pedro I lived in this building, ruled over his Brazilian empire until troubles back in Europe in the mid-1820s induced him to return to Europe in order to secure the throne for his daughter, who was the successor of John VI, who had died. But the throne was being contested by the younger brother of Pedro, and Pedro I returned to Portugal to defend the throne for his daughter, and abdicated the imperial title of Brazil to his son, Pedro II. And Pedro II was the emperor of Brazil for a remarkably long period of time, from this imperial residence from 1831 until 1888. And during that period, Rio became the center of economic, social, administrative, political, and cultural life of a Brazil that was now growing economically and growing demographically in remarkable ways. The whole imperial period was still a period of slavery. Rio had a very large and substantial slave population. In fact, Rio was one of the largest slave ports of the Americas in the whole dreadful history of African slavery across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1888, the mood was that the time for an empire was over, the time for an emperor was past, and Brazil, like many of the other countries of the Americas, should become a republic. In 1888, slavery was ended. In 1889, the Empire of Brazil itself was ended and a republic was established. This place remained important because Rio remained the capital of the Republic of Brazil and would do so right up into past the middle of the 20th century. It was in 1960 that President Kubitschek, for a number of reasons in this expanding country with an expanding population in all parts of the country, judged that it would be good to move the capital to a more central inland location. And in 1960, Rio, after 2 centuries, was no longer the capital of Brazil. The capital moved to Brasilia, where the capital is today. So this building is amazing. It's history. It is the essence of the history of Portugal in Brazil and of Brazil as an independent country for its first 140 years. Capital in Rio, and Rio as the pace setter and the standard setter for the economy, for culture, for the media, and of course, till today, one of the world's most remarkable cities and one of the favorite destinations of people all over the world to come to see places of beauty and history such as the Imperial Palace, but also to see all of the wonders and riches of Rio.